There are miracles in life, not found in magic, but in the quiet kindness of the human heart. Some people choose to live simply, giving without expecting, and in return, they receive gifts no one could have predicted. And then there are those who already have everything, yet still don't know what enough means, only to end up losing themselves. Today's story is a gentle reminder that true wealth doesn't come from the gold you hold in your hands, but from whether your heart knows how to share and stay humble. Let me take you into the tale of a poor old woman, a wealthy lady, and an ancient talking tree deep in the forest. A place where people's hearts are tested, not with words, but with choices. Will you choose kindness or greed? Will you live richly, or remain a soul endlessly chasing more? In a quiet riverside village, two women lived in two completely different worlds, separated only by an old, rotting wooden fence. On one side stood a radiant red-tiled house that gleamed under the morning sun. It belonged to Ms. Ha, the wealthiest woman in the region. Beautiful, sharp-witted, and utterly untouched by worry, Ms. Ha owned vast stretches of farmland and employed countless workers. Wherever she went, the scent of expensive perfume lingered in the air, along with the soft clinking of gold and silver. People bowed when they saw her, not out of admiration, but out of fear and respect. On the other side of the fence was a frail, weather-beaten hut, half collapsed, where an old woman named Lu lived alone. Thin, with hair as white as mist and clothes patched in layers, she leaned on her walking stick each morning and made her way into the forest to gather medicinal herbs, those that grew between stones and along streams. She would dry them and prepare herbal remedies for the poor in the village, trading them for a few cans of rice, a couple of sweet potatoes, or a second-hand shirt. Everyone called her Granny Lu, the herbal healer. She always wore a warm smile and would say, "As long as I can still help someone, I still have a purpose." Though she owned nothing, she often shared her last spoonful of rice or sip of water with hungry wanderers. To her, kindness didn't require wealth, just a heart warm enough to give. But not everyone saw that kindness. Ms. Ha often passed by the old hut with a look of scorn. "What's the point of living in such poverty?" she once scoffed in front of the villagers. To her, a person's worth was measured by the ring on their finger, the bag on their shoulder, and the envy in others' eyes. Two people, two worlds, two ways of living. One yearned to give despite having nothing. The other had the world at her feet, yet never felt it was enough. What neither of them knew was that something extraordinary hidden deep within the forest was about to change their lives forever. Because life has its own quiet justice. It doesn't reward with pretty words, it tests the heart. And in the unlikeliest of places, within a dark, silent forest, a miracle waits for the right soul to find it. The forest where Granny Lu often wandered was no ordinary place. It lay hidden beyond fields of wild grass, past a narrow stream, and a winding trail covered in tangled roots. Few dared to go deep into it, as villagers whispered strange tales, how the wind there howled like whispering voices, and the trees grew so tightly together it felt like they were trying to swallow anyone who lost their way. But to Granny Lu, that forest was an old friend. It gave her healing leaves. It gave her silence. And it was the only place she could truly find peace in a world that never slowed down. Deep within that forest, there stood a tree, an ancient, mysterious giant, so massive that three people holding hands couldn't wrap their arms around it. Its bark was rough like the skin of an old soul, and strangely, its trunk bore the shape of a face, as if lost in deep thought. No one knew when the tree first grew there. But whenever the wind passed through its branches, the leaves would tremble with a sound like a weary sigh from some unseen spirit. The first time Granny Lu came upon the tree, she stopped for a long while. Not out of fear, but because she felt something. It was as if she were standing before a living being, a presence with a heart, one that could listen and feel. From that day on, each time she went into the woods to gather herbs, she would stop by the ancient tree. Gently, she'd place a small handful of rice or a few leftover beans from her cloth pouch at its roots. Then she would bow her head and whisper, as if speaking to a long-lost friend. "I don't have much, but I'd like to share a little. In case you ever feel hunger, may this warm your soul." No one knew she did this. No one noticed. But Granny Lund never forgot. Through sun or rain, that frail figure kept returning to the forest, always stopping by the tree with a human-like face, offering kindness with no expectation of return. That was the greatest difference between Granny Lou and the world outside. A world racing to take, to measure, to compare, while she quietly planted seeds of goodness, even the most barren soil, even when the winds blew hardest. And from that quiet kindness, the kind that seemed to go unnoticed, a miracle slowly began to awaken. Because there are some things in life you can only see when your heart is clear enough. And there are certain gifts that only reveal themselves when you expect absolutely nothing in return. One misty morning, as dew still clung to the leaves, Granny Lou made her way into the forest just like she always did. In her hand was a small cloth pouch, holding only a few grains of rice and a pinch of salt, leftovers from the night before. She passed the familiar old tree, knelt gently by its roots, and placed the tiny bundle down with care. Softly, she whispered, "There's not much left at home today, but I still hope this fills your belly." No sooner had she turned to leave than a warm, deep voice rose from behind her. "You are a kind soul, a rare one. Granny de Fros," not out of fear, but because that voice, it wasn't like anyone she had ever known. It came not from behind, nor beside her, but from beneath the earth, from within the tree itself, from a place she could not point to. Slowly, she turned around. Her aged eyes met the ancient trunk, and in that moment, something miraculous happened. The tree moved. Its wooden face, carved by time and nature, awakened as if roused from a centuries-long slumber. Eyes formed from rings of age creaked open, holding a gaze gentle and familiar, like her grandfather's once had been. And then the tree spoke. Its voice was slow, clear, and so deep it seemed to echo in the very core of her being. "Come back tomorrow, before the sun rises. I will give you a gift. But remember, take only what is enough. When the first light touches me, the gift will disappear." Granny Lou stood still. She didn't know if she was dreaming or truly awake. But her heart didn't stir with greed or excitement, only quiet gratitude. She bowed low, palms pressed together in respect, as if thanking an old friend, and turned to walk home. The next morning, long before the village stirred from sleep, Granny Lou was back at the tree. The forest was still cloaked in pre-dawn hush. A cool breeze brushed through her silver hair, chilly yet comforting. The old tree gave a soft tremble. Then, slowly, a small hollow opened at its center. Inside lay glimmering orbs, glowing like morning dew made of light. They weren't large, nor flashy like treasures from a royal vault, but they sparkled with a warmth that was impossible to describe, as if each gem carried the glow of kindness itself. Granny Lou looked into the hollow. Then, from her pocket, she took out the same tiny cloth pouch. She took exactly 3 gems. No more, no less. She smiled gently and whispered, "This is enough to heal a few souls, enough to feed myself, and enough to share with someone in need." Just then, the first ray of sunlight broke through the trees. The hollow closed. The tree went still, as if it had never moved at all. Granny Lou bowed once more and walked away, her heart light and at peace. Not just because of the glowing stones she carried, but because at last, her quiet kindness had been heard by the universe itself. Since that fateful morning beneath the ancient tree, Granny Lee's life began to change. Not with noise or extravagance, but quietly, just like the way she'd always lived. She took the 3 small, glowing gems to the jeweler in the district town. After examining them closely under his magnifying glass and special light, the man nearly dropped his tools in awe. "Ma'am, this isn't ordinary jade. This is spirit jade, incredibly rare. Just one of them," he explained, was enough to buy her a solid house and ensure a lifetime of comfort. But Granny Lou only sold one. The remaining 2, she kept safe, one for emergencies and the other to give away someday. From that day forward, she no longer had to trek into the forest with aching knees or stretch every grain of rice with boiled potatoes. But her habits remained unchanged. She still brewed herbal tea for the poor, mended clothes for the neighborhood children, and every morning she visited the old tree, not to ask for anything, but simply to bow and say thank you. The village was puzzled. Some were happy for her. Others whispered and speculated. But no one dared pry too deeply. No one, except one person, the wealthy woman from the other side of the fence. At first, Ha merely glanced at Granny Lu from behind her lace curtains, eyes filled with quiet suspicion. But when word spread that Granny Lu had started giving away premium medicine, buying new clothes for children in nearby villages, and seemed unbothered by money, Ha's curiosity twisted into something else. That old woman was dirt poor, and now she's giving things away. She didn't believe in kindness, and she certainly didn't believe in luck. To her, wealth always came with a strategy or a secret. One morning, Ha stepped out in her courtyard, pretending to stretch, and accidentally bumped into Granny Lu, who was feeding a few birds. Her smile was sugar sweet, but her eyes scanned like a hawk. "You seem to be doing pretty well lately. Someone helping you out?" Granny Lu just smiled gently. "Well, the forest tree has a kind heart." It was a vague reply, too vague, and that only fueled Ha's restless mind. That night, she couldn't sleep. Over and over, she replayed the image. The poor old woman, the small cloth bag, the ancient tree, and those 3 mysterious gems. But it wasn't admiration that stirred her. It was desire. The next week, silk robes were replaced by plain cloth, her glittering jewelry tucked away in drawers. She packed a basket and set off toward the woods, not to discover kindness, but to uncover the secret of becoming richer than anyone else. Ever since that day, every morning, villagers saw a mysterious figure quietly disappearing into the forest, wearing worn-out clothes, a conical hat pulled low to hide her face, and carrying a bamboo basket in hand. No one suspected that behind those tattered clothes was none other than Ha, the wealthiest woman in the village. She mimicked every move Granny Lu had made. She'd kneel before the old tree, place a handful of rice at its roots, and mutter a rehearsed phrase. "I offer this gift, hoping to be rewarded." But her words were hollow. No sincerity, no gratitude, just a mask, something she believed could fool even magic. Day after day, she persisted, not out of kindness, but out of calculation. She believed that if Granny Lu, old and poor, had been gifted something, then she, smart, rich, and strategic, would surely get much more. And then, one morning, just as she had hoped, the ancient tree spoke. That deep, echoing voice rose from the earth, from the roots, from the unexplainable. "You have not held back your offering. You have been patient in sowing what you believe is good. Return tomorrow, before the sun rises. But remember, take only what is enough. Once the first ray of sunlight touches my trunk, all doors will close." Ha could barely contain her grin. That night, she didn't sleep. Not out of worry, but because she was too busy calculating how many bags to bring. That foolish old woman only took 3 gems and called it enough. But me? I can take 10, 20, hell, 100 if they fit. The next morning before dawn, she was already there. On her back was a bag bigger than she was, woven from the sturdiest silk. And when the tree opened its glowing hollow, revealing those radiant gems inside, Ha nearly lost her mind. The gems sparkled with a soft, mesmerizing light, warm and inviting. Without hesitation, she began to shovel them into her bag. 1 gem, then 2, then 10. The bag grew heavier, but she didn't stop. Just a few more, and then a sliver of sunlight slipped through the treetops. The tree's hollow began to close, slowly but with unwavering force. Startled, Ha lunged to grab more. Her hand was still inside. She yanked the bag, trying to snatch just one last gem. But the hollow slammed shut, trapping her arm in a crushing, eerie grip. She screamed, but the forest stood silent. No one heard. No one came. Her eyes locked on the bag full of gems. But all she felt was searing pain, and a regret that struck deeper than any wound. Because the one thing she never possessed was the wisdom to know when enough is enough. Since that day, no one ever saw Ha at the edge of the village again. People whispered and speculated, but Granny Lu remained silent. She didn't mock, didn't judge. She simply carried on with her daily life. As if nothing had changed, the ancient tree still stood there, silent, steady, like a witness to all the joys and sorrows in human hearts. But ever since the hollow closed, it never opened again. No more magic, no more glowing gems. Only the rustle of leaves and rays of sunlight slipping through the branches. Like a quiet whisper. Kindness is not a ticket to earn a reward. It is the reward when you're gentle enough to give without asking for anything in return. Granny Lee's story slowly faded, like a soft breeze brushing past the noise of life. But for those who saw it, who heard it, it left something deep behind. That sometimes, those with the least give the most. That true magic isn't for the scheming, but comes from quiet, honest acts. The kind no one sees, but the universe always feels. Granny Lu, a poor, elderly woman, never became rich, never built a mansion, never wore gold. But she spent her remaining days in peace. Each afternoon, she taught the village kids how to mend and stitch. Each morning, she greeted the old tree like an old friend. And every night, she lit a small lamp by her door, for anyone lost to find their way home. As for Ha, the woman who once had everything, she now lived quietly in her grand house, with one arm no longer whole, and a lesson she would carry for the rest of her life. In the end, this story isn't about gems, or magic trees, or riches. It's a soft reminder. In this life, the truly wealthy aren't the ones who have the most. They're the ones who know when enough is enough. And the happiest people aren't those who possess everything, but those who, even with little, are still willing to share. You may not have money, but if your heart is rich with kindness, then in life's eyes, you're already the richest of all. Maybe right now, you're asking yourself, if it were me, who would I be in that story? The old woman, poor and with nothing left to lose, yet still choosing to give from the goodness of her heart. Or the wealthy one, who always felt empty, because she never knew what enough truly meant? You see, in this life, each of us will one day stand before our own ancient tree, a moment of truth, when we must choose, to give or to demand, to be sincere or to scheme, to feel grateful or to be greedy. This story isn't just a fable or a metaphor. It's a mirror, reflecting the kind of person we are inside. Granny Lu wasn't given a miracle because she was poor. She received it because she was kind. And Ha wasn't punished because she was rich. She was punished because she let greed take over her heart. The real difference between the two wasn't money. It was how they chose to live. You could live in a tiny home and still have a heart so big it touches others. Or live in a mansion, yet feel completely alone because you've never known love or shared a thing. We're often caught chasing something to make our lives feel richer. Money, status, praise, spotlight. But how often do we pause and ask ourselves, do I already have enough? Am I truly happy? Or am I just rushing to gather more, only to still feel empty? The answer lies in the little choices you make every day. A hug for someone you love, a coin for someone in need, a smile for someone who's weary, a kind word for yourself. These things, though small, are the real gems. No te asure compares. You don't need to go looking for some ancient tree in the deep forest, because the only place where true magic lives is in your own heart. And if today you feel like you have nothing, don't be afraid. As long as you still choose kindness, you are already richer than millions.